Hey everybody, Dean Doc Sakis here with the National Pitching Association. I've got my good friends with me today, Robert Ambrose and our founder, Tom House. We've got something fun to do today. We're going to talk about pitch selection in the game and exactly about what are the stresses involved with those different types of pitches. I think we're going to open some eyes today about exactly which pitches are more stressful than others and what are some of the real reasons why stress increases and reasons why the grips and hand positions and things like that as well. So we're going to start off with this slide right here. Robert, take us away on this and tell us what we're looking at.
Thanks, Dean. So anytime you're working with a pitcher, right, while we're training them, we want the pitcher to know what pitches for them have the highest stress and the lowest stress. So when you look at pitch volumes, right, you need to take into account what type of pitch you're also throwing. So if you look at the slide here, I'd like everybody to try to guess from top to bottom what pitch has the lowest stress and which pitch has the highest stress. So we're going to go highest stress to lowest stress on the chart. So give you guys a second to think about it. And I think most people will probably pick curveball. But in fact, the highest stress pitch on the arm when measured valgus stress is the cutter. And we ask the pitchers don't throw that until 25 because that's when athletes are fully developed physically. That's when growth typically stops at 25 years old. And then, surprisingly, the next most stressful pitch is the changeup, or the fastball, closely followed by the changeup. And finally, at the bottom, the most or the easiest pitch to throw, the least stressful pitch, is a properly thrown curveball. Now, there are some different curveballs that you can throw, so it's important for us to take a look at what some of those are. But the curveball that we teach, the NPA curveball, has the lowest stress of all pitches.
So let me back up a little bit here, Robert, real quick. Go back to that list again. Tom, tell us specifically more, because I know, but nobody else, I want to hear from everybody hear from you. Tell us why the cutter is probably the most stressful pitch on as far as valgus stress.
Yeah, the research shows that the cutter is thrown with very close to the same arm speed that the fastball is, but it actually has a little bit different angle, more toward a karate chop than the fastball does. And what happens with youngsters, they haven't got the strength to set that angle and keep it with arm speed, and they twist slightly to make the ball cut. And it's that twist into release point that tears the elbow up.
And also, as far as a cutter, the reason why it's called a cutter is because they're not centering the ball between thumb and middle finger. It's over to the side. So again, that's what promotes that additional twisting that could be a problem, correct?
Yeah, and Dean, that's perfect. And when Robert did the MODIS study, if literally, if you are twisting into release point when the forearm, the wrist, and the fingers are going as the fastest that the arm will ever go, that is what tears the elbow up.
And yes, it's a great pitch, but it should be age appropriate.
Okay. Yes, it's a grown man's pitch.
There we go.
Not a teenager pitch.
Okay, so let's go on and talk about, where most people probably thought the curveball was the most dangerous pitch in baseball. I think even the 90s and early 2000s, they were thinking about banning that pitch in Little League because of it. But let's tell you why that was wrong. There's been lots of great studies besides our own.
And so a lot of that concern led to studies by both Little League and ASMI, and they found that it really didn't matter what pitch was thrown, that it was throwing volumes and it was poor mechanics that caused injury. So throwing pitches with poor mechanics or in higher volumes than the pitcher could handle. But breaking balls, they weren't a risk factor in injury for athletes. So, but there are different curveballs that are taught, and some of those are dangerous. The first one, Dean, can you just put your ball up there? I don't have it.
Right, yeah.
So turn the doorknob into release is one that's taught. And so if you're trying to come into release and you're trying to turn the ball into release, right? And I actually had my son throw that with the MODIS sleeve on. And before the ball ever got to me, the first thing he said was, ouch. So that one actually hurt his arm, and that had the highest stress of any pitch that I've ever seen him throw. The next one is hooking the wrist, right? So I'm trying to hook the wrist into release, and that's dangerous for the UCL, the elbow joint, and the wrist. Next is thumb the ball, trying to thumb the ball through release, and that just creates a hump on the ball. It doesn't work very well. If you're a good hitter, you recognize a curveball easy. That one just goes in the parking lot. Then flop the wrist through release, right? So you're going to come through release here, and you're going to try to flop the wrist. That's dangerous to the wrist and elbow. And then finally, you come to the safest curveball, which is the one we teach and call it the NPA curveball. All right.
And just to expand a little bit, Robert, There's actually, I see pitchers even today that are snapping their fingers with a ball in their hand, trying to put speed on it by twisting their thumb. That actually slows spin rate down. So stay away from anything that is going to move wrist or fingers into release point.
And Robert, next slide back, after this, we're going to show the actual grip and talk about where it is in the hand and things like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So our
Let's go
method
on.
of teaching different pitching grips, though, especially for youth athletes, is we want you to preset the grip in your glove, right? So when you break your arm, there's no forearm rotation. So if you watch my arm, it's a fastball grip. I want to break fastball. I want to come out and throw fastball. There's no forearm rotation. If I put a curveball in my glove, I break curveball. There's no forearm rotation, right? So forearm rotation is one of the major stressors on the UCL. So Tom, can you talk about how to throw different pitches? Is it more important for forearm angle or for grip?
Well, it's wrist and forearm angle that deliver the grip. Let me say that again. The pitch that you're throwing is setting your wrist and your forearm almost in concrete. And then the grip itself is how the fingers and the thumb cut the ball in half. So you and I have been talking about this. We've been talking about it for 25, 30 years. You can grab a 4-seam fastball grip and make the ball curve, sink, whatever. The grip is thumb and middle finger cutting the ball in the half. That's the grip. Making the pitch move is wrist and forearm. So I've seen the slides, so I know we're going to go with this. So if you think about cut the ball in half with thumb and middle finger, and then arrange your wrist and forearm in a preset, to use your words, preset it in the glove, and then just deliver the pitch. Do not let anything twist the grip into release point.
So we don't want to be twisting any pitch into release, right? Changing forearm angle. We want to.
That is a bad elbow and or a bad shoulder.
When we look at elite pitchers, in the moment that they're at release with their curveballs, what we see is a firm wrist straight. Okay, we don't see any twisting, snapping, curving. It's almost their hands are in a complete karate chop position and a straight wrist. There's no cupping. Of course, we have, your cement mixer, hanging curveball, great curveball, and this is your bouncing in, not for a strike curveball. So we see this, and this is done by properly gripping the ball.
And Dean, show again what the cement mixer.
Okay. Cement mixer. You want to never see a ball again and not get it back. Just throw a curveball like this.
Your wrist,
with a bent wrist. Now your arm can be straight and be at this angle at release, but if you have this angle like that, then you're giving that one up. So.
And then what Dean just demonstrated, the only way you can keep your wrist firm, which is a mobile joint, is to recruit strength in the fingertips and the forearm. And that requires, and I'm sure Robert's going to talk about it in a second, you want to squeeze your breaking ball as hard as you can. When you squeeze the breaking ball as hard as you can, it will firm up your wrist. There is no floppy wrist when you squeeze as hard as you can.
Right. So what we're going to go over now is the MPA curveball. And this is the safest curveball you can throw, the one we'll see in the chart in the next slide. First thing you're going to do is bury the ball deep in your hand. So there's not going to be any space between the ball and your hand. Dean, can you show that on the camera? Just show it buried deep in there. Show the other side.
Yeah.
There's no space.
We see a lot of this in curveballs where there's a space in here. And what happens is you can twist your fingers and it doesn't stabilize that mobile joint if it's not all the way back. But if we bury it, now I'm forced to turn my arm to the complete, not twist. The whole arm puts in position for a great curveball.
And also holding in the fingers, you're not going to be able to hold on to it long enough to make it look like a fastball at release. It's going to pop up above your hand, and good curveball hitters are going to recognize it's not a fastball. And we're going to preset the forearm angle in the glove, and this is for youth pitchers. And as you get older, you can break your hands to preset, right, so that they can't get a tell on you from second base, or if they can see very well, the grip that you have in your glove.
That's a good point. I mean, presetting is a great tool for young pitchers. Go ahead and set the hand position of the glove where you take off. But as we know, as you get further along this game, there's a lot of people that are looking for you to show the pitch. So you can, as you get older, you can get away from that, but it's a great teaching tool to start off with.
Yeah, nobody's going to hit it at the youth level for sure, no matter if they know it's coming or not.
Yeah.
And we got to squeeze the ball really hard, to Tom's point, to stabilize the wrist and also help stabilize the elbow. Squeezing it is part of the reason why this is a very safe pitch. We want the ball to come out like a fastball, and then it's going to break late into the zone. We don't want to see a hump at release. We don't want to see the ball pop up above the plane. We want the fastballs, the changeups, the curveballs, the sliders, all to leave in the same release point for the first 4 feet and not change or any break at all until it gets late into the zone.
Tunnel versus spread. Those are the greats. They're able to tunnel all their pitches the same and spread differently.
So when I first heard this from Tom, honestly, I was skeptical. So I came home and put together a research project. And what I did was I took 10 players and I had each player throw 10 pitches, 10 fastballs, 10 changeups, and 10 curveballs. And then I took the lowest stress curveball versus the highest stress fastball or changeup. But I have to say that each pitch stayed in a pretty narrow range, that fastballs were consistent, changeups were consistent, curveballs were consistent. What I was surprised to find was the separation or difference between whatever that pitcher's highest stress pitch was, either his fastball or his changeup, and the curveball. So when you take those into account and just think about a pitcher's volumes in season or even in a game, let's say you threw 100 pitches in a game. Some of those, let's say all of them were fastballs or all of them were curveballs. In this case, we have 10 pitchers and basically 10 pitches. So the difference between your highest stress fastball or changeup and your lowest stress curveball is 93 Newton meters of stress. So you add that up over the course of a game or the course of a season, we're talking about a tremendous amount of stress difference between fastballs and changeups or curveballs. Now it should make sense as we have everybody's concerned about youth athletes and elbow injuries, but most organizations require their pitchers to throw primarily fastballs because they believe that fastball is the lowest stress pitch on the arm compared to changeups or curveballs, when in fact that's not the case at all.
So let me expand that just a little bit. The 3 things that keep an arm healthy are pitch totals, your mechanical efficiency, and your functional strength. And what Robert and Dean just talked about, when you're a peewee, when you're 11 or 12-year-old, the muscles in your forearm and your wrist aren't really strong. So you have to overload, you have to force yourself, you have to cheat in your preset to recruit what strength you do have. So everyone talks you want a snappy wrist at release point. I firmly believe that the harder you squeeze the ball, the easier it is on your arm with all pitches, but especially with the curveball.
It's proven in this data, and other organizations as well as ASMI have shown that as well. So it's just a matter of changing the ideas and the thoughts that have been going on for so long. And I'll say this as well. We'll have people just say, well, but it's important to master your fastball. Yes, it is. We're not saying that we still got to have biomechanical efficiencies like Tom said. But what we're saying is that if you can properly grip a curveball, it can be a less stressful pitch than a fastball.
It is for all pitchers that I've measured to this point.
Yep.
And honestly, curveball, as far as developing something other than a fastball, curveball is easier to learn than a changeup. Changeup is a very effective pitch, but just about everybody picks up a curveball when shown how to throw it properly pretty quickly and can throw it for a strike. Changeup takes a little bit more time to master.
Exactly. Now, one note I have in here from your study, Robert, I want to point out is that the MPA curveball, what we're calling the MPA curveball, the one that we bury and squeeze and stabilize this mobile joint, had an increase in arm speed over a curveball that's held incorrectly. So now we're talking about not only creating a pitch that has movement, but one that's very deceptive coming out of a pitch. Again, that tunnel is going to be more like your fastball. And so there's other advantages besides just health. If you want a high performing curveball that tunnels and spreads late, the MPA style is probably the best for you.
Yeah, that was also a surprise to me to find that the fastest arm speed that I saw all day was on curveballs.
Yeah.
And Robert, the other thing that you had in here that I found really amazing was that with the MPA curveball, there was less variation between the pitches. Can you explain that as far as um, all of the variables, arm angle, arm speed, things like that? Was that correct?
Yeah. So what I actually did in this study was prior. There's a lot of these kids. I wanted to have a baseline, so I had them throw whatever curveball they knew before they showed up. Right. So whatever that was, I had them describe what it was, and it was one of those on the list. All of them were taught. Some of them was like throw the football. Was the other teach they were told? It said just throw the pitch like a football. But they were all taught a different method. So that curveball, and they threw 10 curveballs, and I had a wide variety of arm speeds, arm angles. It was just all over the map. And then I took them aside, and we used towel drill to train our curveball. So I put a ball inside the towel to learn to hold it, bury it deep, and squeeze it hard. And then we trained with a towel drill with a partner. Is how we learned the curveball. And then we went back to the mound, and for each player, the spreads on arm speed, arm slot, internal, external rotation, the timing of the delivery was much more consistent, right? In addition to all these other benefits, what happened there was that pitcher just became a lot more effective because you could no longer tell that it was a curveball. Their curveball looked like their fastball or their slider or their changeup. So that was
Exactly.
really
So ideally, done properly in a delivery, you want three pitches to look like your fastball release, and two of them aren't fastballs. That's what Robert just said. And think about it this way, maybe put a little ribbon around this whole thing. When you're pounding a nail with a hammer, the strongest position to pound that nail is the curveball position. So you can go either way. Think about it, pounding a nail with a hammer or throwing a curveball with a firm wrist. Same idea. And that's where the arm speed comes in. You're going to swing a hammer much faster holding it like a curveball than if you were twisting to try to hit the nail accordingly like a fastball.
I think
So
that's
that's
one of
where
the best
Yellowhammer
analogies.
came from. The old school good curveball guys were told they had a good Yellowhammer. So see what we just did? We
Bill
connected
Staley,
old
huh?
school with new school. Your fault, Robert. Next time we put this up, I want Yellowhammer on there somewhere.
That's one of the best analogies I can think of. I mean, it's really one of the most least stressful arm positions is the hand to the side, not even where the fastball is. So just to review real quick, so everybody understands how to walk away and teach young people how to throw curveballs. One, make sure you're splitting the ball in half between middle finger and thumb. The grip is not as important as the position. Okay. Like Tom said, you could throw a curveball like this if your hand position is correct at release. But most people want to grab the part that the seam that comes down the side here, and it's really easy to know if you're splitting the ball in half because as soon as your thumb feels the seam down here, you know you got it. Okay. Now the other thing is bury that sucker all the way back in here, no space, and that prevents your young player from twisting instead of stabilizing and turning his whole hand to get to that great curveball position. Okay. And as long as he's squeezing tight, this mobile joint will be stabilized. It won't flop around. So he's not going to hang it. This will be great. If you squeeze this tight, you can't wobble it around. And this is bouncing in, not going to make it, staying on the strike zone. Okay. Squeeze tight all the way back, split in half, and throw it like a fastball. And you've got a curveball. Simple as that. Robert, you got anything else?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to mention there, and I don't know if we've ever discussed this before, but can you put your curveball back up there?
You
Dean?
bet, man.
The way you held it, like you're at release, right?
Yeah.
You're at release. So that's almost like a two-seam curveball, right? Where it's going to come out with the two seams versus a four-seam curveball. You can spin it either way with four seams or with two seams. So what I do is with the pitchers that I have, every now and then I'll have a guy that spins it too much with four seams, and I'll move it more like a two seam, and it won't break as much. So you can change the way the seams are in the air to control how late the break is and how deep the break is. It's just something you have to pay attention to because you can grip the ball many different ways and still have that same arm angle, right? So pay attention to spin. It's just backwards with a curveball.
And I mentioned this earlier, and I just want to bring it up one more time because if you're looking at slow motion video on pitchers, depending on their arm slot, if they're, we teach eyes level is your natural arm slot. Depending on the arm slot will depend on how this is. So if I'm a high arm slot, yeah, it's going to look like this. But if I'm a low slot guy, and it's hard to show on here, but you're actually going to look like you're underneath the ball. But as long as the wrist is straight, you're doing it right. Okay. So if you're a really low slot guy, you're going to see this at release. But as long as the wrist is straight, this is like Charlie Morton right here. Okay. Then you're going to have a great curveball. Okay. Tom, you got anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
If everybody that is listening and viewing this, if they follow those rules, curveballs will never be an issue with injury.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to throw one more thing in. If you break out the percentage of pitches out of 100, try to break them down 60 to 65% fastballs, 20 to 25% breaking balls, and 15 to 20% changeups. Those are the ratios of pitches out of 100 that are proving to be the safe way to approach going between the lines.
Excellent. All right. I think this is all great information. Hopefully this helps a whole lot of people. Get to our website, nationalpitching.com. You can purchase a remote session with any of our coaches, or you can sign up for a membership that gets you access to all of our training videos. Thank y'all. Y'all have a great day.